But I used to do this thing where like my to-do list would have like 20 things on it that had to get done. And he was like, just make your to-do list like 3 things. Like, what are the 3 things you actually have to get done that day? And now I've shifted that where it's like my to-do list usually has like 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 if it's a really crazy day. Never anything more than that. Just makes it a lot more manageable and you actually move the needle forward versus trying to build Rome in a day and then you end up not getting shit done.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to It's the Bearded Man podcast with your favorite, the world's favorite bearded man, Bob Beck. Special guest on the podcast today. Fortunately, we're doing this virtually. I'd much rather see this man in person. He's previously a creative for both Adobe and Gary Vee. You may have come across some of his content on YouTube where he's focused on creativity, personal growth, and process. Guest episode 50 for Purpose in the Youth, which came out in August of 2017 for all the OG Bearded Man followers out there. And lastly, most importantly, a fellow bearded brother. Tyler Babin, welcome to the show, brother.
Dude, the day before you hit me up for this, I shaved. Like, I would have been far more prepared. I know, man. I don't know. Like,
it still looks good.
You know, I always got to leave like the stubble in there and stuff like that. But I'm not good, man. I have this weird habit where I will just like not shave for a month, get some real length going. And then instead of doing any kind of like maintenance, I just take the whole thing off and like start fresh again.
Well, two reasons for that. 1, quarantine life. 2, now you live in Oregon. So it's part of the culture. It's part of
very true.
It's part of living up there. Dude, super 100%. Excited to chat with you today. There's 3 main topics we're going to dive into just to give you a little bit of context: personal, creative, and process. I think those are clearly 3 buckets that you focus on, and I think there's 3 incredible topics that are really important to me too. But to lead off, man, since we last talked, you've made this significant move from NYC to Portland, which I can only imagine the emotions running through your mind as you were making that leap. New York City, I feel like, and I'm sure you would agree, played such an important role in your growth and your career, and just it was the dream city for you to always live in. So now looking, 4 months plus into living and having made that move, how has this positively impacted you?
Yeah, man. It's really funny. Like, this is the 3rd time I've been on like some sort of podcast with you, and every time it's been at these really distinct periods in my life. And so I think this is a great jumping off point. Yeah, I mean, I was in New York for 5 years. It was a grind, like went crazy. And then through like quarantine and COVID and everything that changed over the last year, I was like, one, kind of sucks paying so much money for an incredibly small apartment that you have to do everything in. I was like, it'd be nice to have some space.
You made it work, though. You made it work. You crushed it. I see some of that content. That Nike shoe, I was like, damn, this boy looked like a $20,000 commercial.
But I mean, it was like, that was definitely weighing on me so much. Like, I wanted some space. And also, I had been in New York for a long time. And I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I was taking it for granted, but it was home at that point. It wasn't, it was every day I walked out and I saw the same people and the same stuff. And even though you're in this epic, crazy city, my life felt like it was sort of on autopilot. And I think sometimes you just got to like get in there and really shake things up. And so I had this idea to just get out of New York, and we picked a random place, and we're like, all right, I had never been here. My girlfriend that I moved with, she had never been here. We just picked it and went for it. And it's been cool, man. It was a good shakeup. Whether or not this will be a long-term solution, I don't know. It's cool. Does it feel like home? That's still a little bit up in the air. But it was an important thing to remember how important it is to shake things up constantly, like change and forces growth. And also, I think that right now, especially with like content creation, and especially now that content creation is becoming a job, there's this mindset sometimes that you have to be in an A-list city. If you're not in New York and you're not in LA, it's not doable. And I think for myself, I just wanted to prove that wasn't the case, and that I could take my business and my life to pretty much anywhere in the world and still make a good living and be able to make the things I wanted to make.
When I heard you were moving, my immediate thought was, oh, he's going to LA. It's got to be the next step from New York. And then to hear you go to Portland, I was like, well, I mean, it's probably a beautiful place. I've never been there before, but it immediately was like kind of a shock to me, because I would have thought easily the next step in Babin's career is go to LA, lean into some of the great relationships that I'm sure he already has, get himself even more established and find more opportunities. But it seems from afar you've stayed busy and you've been enjoying it. And I like the idea of shaking it up and throwing yourself into that uncomfort zone of you would never even visit a place, and you're just probably on Zillow looking for an apartment, sign the lease, and like pack up the car, get the dog, let's roll out.
Yeah, that was exactly it. And I think you're right. Like, I remember when I like first like teased it, I posted just on Instagram story that I was moving to the West Coast. I didn't say anything. And dude, like hundreds of messages rolled in. They were like, you're finally moving to LA. That's sick. And I was like, just wait till you see, you know? But it was because I think that was the obvious choice, like going to LA. And dude, LA is one of my favorite cities in the entire world. And I have no doubt that I will live in or very close to LA at some point in my life. But, you know, COVID and it was a wake-up call in a lot of ways. And I was like, you know what, let's take this year where a lot of things aren't going to be doable. I can't live my life the way I had been living it for the previous 5 years, which was on and off airplanes every other day and like traveling the world and stuff. And I was like, let's just do something wildly left field and like see what comes out of it. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's changed my perspective in a lot of ways. Like, I was never into shooting landscapes. All of a sudden I'm like, yeah, let's go take pictures of mountains every day, you know, like that. And that's stuff that like I probably wouldn't have felt that way if I had gone to LA. And so like I said, like I don't think that this will be a long-term place. Like I can already feel myself, like the slower paced lifestyle is like itching, because I think like in my heart I'm still like a New Yorker
totally.
Like, in my core, you know, even if I wasn't born there. But this was a really, really great experience. And like, I'll never regret taking time away from these A-list cities to experiment and try something else.
Well, I think you're smart. You know that at some point you will end up in LA, and it's going to be much harder for you to want to leave another city like LA, like, you know, New York, you were there for long enough that once you get here, it's harder to leave. Like I always tell people the story that I should have went to New York City for a couple years after I left Boston so I could enjoy that and then move to LA, because now I feel like it's impossible for me to go back to the East Coast, back to the colder months. I'm just like, no way in hell am I ever going to do that. So I think you made the right approach, dude.
That is one thing. I mean, God, we're getting on this huge rant about like West Coast, East Coast vibes. Like I love East Coast. I mean, I grew up in Florida, kind of similar. Like you were like East Coast guy from the start. But damn, there's something about like the energy on the West Coast that I just don't like going back and forth, man. It's tough.
I know. Speaking just and still in like just personal aspect, what are some of your daily routines that are important to you for your personal growth? Curious.
It changes a lot, and so I always want to caveat anytime I answer a question like this that what I'm saying right now could literally change tomorrow.
It's probably going to change.
Yeah, probably
like,
will.
I told the bearded man I did this. Nah, we're changing this tomorrow.
Yeah, I've switched up a lot of like my early morning routine, where historically my life was wake up and do nothing but like walk from the bed to my desk and start working right away. Stopped doing that this year. Tried to separate my like work and life a little bit more, kind of like find some more harmony, which is something I think I was missing. So now it's like wake up, actually like go for a walk, take time to make breakfast. I got a puppy now, so like play with him for a little bit. And then, you know, like I'll ease into the office at, 10, 11, maybe sometimes noon if it's like a slower day. And then like that's when I get started. And I've just noticed that making those separations for me has been really important. I think the whole like hustle culture and like grind 24/7, we're kind of like moving past that era. Like I think a lot of people are like recognizing like mental health and finding balance and things like that. And so that's something that for me has been a big priority, is like, you know what, you don't have to jump out of bed and jump straight into Premiere Pro and just like not leave for like 12 hours a day. Yeah. And so I think that's been like a big focus right now, is just taking more time for myself and realizing that if I take a slow morning or if I'm not working around the clock, it's not like my career is going to end overnight.
Yeah. I unfortunately think, because I did that before too, especially when I was living in Boston, I remember I'd wake up and start working within the first 30 minutes. And I unfortunately
But
feel
sometimes you have to, though.
Yeah.
Like, sorry to cut you off, but
totally.
Dude, in the beginning, like you got a lot of work to, like there's always going to be someone working harder than you. So
totally.
I'll say that comes from a place of privilege, and like the fact that I've built up a little bit of an audience and a business that I can like, that can float a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like
But
I think the only reason I've got to separate like life and work now is because I didn't stop for the first 6 years.
There you go. Exactly.
You know?
I wanted to defend yourself and say it isn't privilege. It is earned privilege. You put in those reps.
Yeah.
You put in those hours of early mornings, late nights. All it was work. There was no balance. It just bled as one. But it becomes a beautiful thing when you can get through that phase and actually you're not stressed about proving to anybody your capabilities because you already have a track record. Not to say that your videos are X better than everybody else, but you have consistently shown the public, YouTube, Instagram community, the world, that you can consistently deliver a product, which sometimes is it's not even sometimes. It is the hardest part, is delivering the product on a consistent basis over a long period of time, which then I think allows you to have that space where you casually roll in at 11 or noon, or, that's why people like Casey Neistat, he's built himself such a career where he can choose to not drop a video for 6 months to a year, but when he does drop it, everyone's like, oh shit, Casey's back on the map. So you earned it though,
Yeah. I think like it's one of those, it feels weird because I've also just like, I've had the benefit, I think, of enjoying the work I've done. And there's something, I think it's easy to be harder on yourself whenever you do stuff that you like, that you shouldn't be allowed to like take time off. It's like, I just got to keep going. It's one of the hardest mindsets to break out of.
Yeah.
I think if it wasn't for like all this lockdown shit, that I probably wouldn't have ever realized that.
Yeah, I think people really had a wake-up call. Even me personally, I added more sleep into my life because there's no commuting to and from. So I was using that time instead of commuting to an office that I could actually do the work. And then all that extra time was to myself. So now I was like, wait, I still have more free time. Let me put that into sleeping. And wow, I feel so much more productive throughout the day instead of trying to squeeze in 2 more hours when I can get that extra sleep. And the next day, I feel like the whole 12-hour day is so much more better focused because I'm not drained and I'm not like half asleep freaking slinging Red Bulls and shots of coffee, which I'm sure you're still slinging.
I'm still slinging everything, man.
Still waiting for that sponsorship to come. So if anybody at Red Bulls listen to this, get this man a deal. Any book, podcast, or creator that has impacted you positively the most within the past year?
That's a good question. I have really tried to stop consuming, which might be kind of
everything,
books, a different route to go. Yeah, I mean, I'm still obviously consuming stuff in passing, but I've really, really tried to slow things down. I'm reading a lot. I read The Dip by Seth Godin. Been like cranking through a lot of Seth Godin books recently.
He's the GOAT.
Just on like kind of like mindset and shipping, like creative work and things like that. But I have actually been doing this new practice where I have 2 phones. I have like my designated like work phone that's got a SIM card. It's got like my text and email and everything like that. What that phone does not have is YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. It has nothing on it.
Wow.
And that's the phone I use all the time. And then I have like my old like broken iPhone, which actually has all of like my social apps on it. That phone stays off and it only has Wi-Fi. So
whoa, what a game changer.
Yeah. And it's been it hasn't been like super, super long. I'm probably coming up on like a month of doing that. And it's weird how much happier I am in like all assets. Just like not being attached to like content and consuming so much. So I'm really trying to get to a place where I'm creating a lot more than I'm consuming, because so much of like, I think we all went through the phase of like early quarantine months of just like binging everything there was on Netflix and shit like that. And so now I'm kind of trying to go to the opposite side and consume as little as possible so that I feel like the things I'm making aren't influenced in any way.
That's good. And if you're just picking up books, you're the only things you are consuming are things that you're intentionally going out of your way to consume.
Yeah.
Instead of scrolling, seeing somebody on social media that you didn't anticipate, and then falling for the comparison trap or getting caught up in somebody else's life or all the million other things that come with social media. That's a bold move, man. I respect that. That's not easy to do in 2021.
Definitely not easy. And it won't be forever by any means. Like, it's just trying to, I think, kind of reset my mental a little bit.
Well, going off of that, reset the mental, kind of diving into some more of the creative stuff, back to the mission. That was what inspired me to hit you up, because I saw, I get suggested Babin drops new content. I go, stop everything. We got to fire this bad boy up. And even before we hopped on here for like the last 45 minutes, I was just clicking around on some of your YouTube videos, and you're an incredible storyteller, and you don't need to respond to that, because I know you don't like compliments. So just know that I really respect your creative work. But speaking on back to the mission, your most recent piece, how have you found that stepping away from the work actually helps you make progress? Because I think it's a hidden gem that helps a lot of people, and it helped me, like I was telling you before. Stepping away and then getting back into the podcast game was a game changer. I needed that space. How has creating that space for you been productive?
Yeah. So I think to give like a little bit of context on how that video sort of came to be and all that, is that over last summer, the Nike video that you mentioned like at the beginning, right? That video generated a wave of work that I had never anticipated or thought was possible. And it's one of those things, realizing that me making a video that took me a few hours generated essentially like 6 months of work, where all of a sudden there were more like sponsorships and brand opportunities coming through than I had ever anticipated, right? And it was great. I just started saying yes to everything. And so pretty much from last summer up until the last week of December, I was grinding on like some sort of branded work, and it was great. Like, made a lot of money. Like, that's always great. You feel like that the financial stability that we were talking about, like that's always something that's important. And I'm like, and I'm doing all this shit with a camera. Like, this is dream come true, right?
This is butter, baby.
But there's also like stresses that come with that. And all of a sudden, like, I've kind of have always said that I don't really believe in like real burnout if you love what you're doing, because to me, the idea of burning out is like, if a candle is burnt out, like it's not coming back, like it's like done. It won't come back in the same way. But I do believe that you can stretch yourself too thin and everything becomes watered down to a point where you're sort of like just floating around in the ocean. You have no idea like which way is which, because you just get, soaked. And that's how I felt at the end of December. It was a mess. Like, my brain was just like not clicking. Didn't know how I should be packaging up content. Didn't know the future of content, like where I wanted to push my energy. Everything just felt wrong. And so it was like 1 week passed where I didn't make a video, and then another week passed where I didn't make a video, and another. And all of a sudden it was like 2 months that I hadn't made a video. And hadn't really made any like major pieces of content, at least publicly. I was still like directing projects and like things were rolling, but me putting out a piece of content hadn't happened. And I just noticed that in that time I gave myself, like, connections started to reform. They started to reform better than how it had been through this like 6 month crazy run of work. And it made me realize, like, oh, in this world where we're always being told, like, if you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not pushing forward, you're falling backwards. If you're not moving forward, you're falling backwards. I was like, no, I actually think there's tons of work that I'm doing and processing in myself to make the future of my work better than what it is right now. And that requires me to not have my head buried into a laptop or not writing scripts or things like that. Like, I need to actually let myself grow and heal a little bit more. And so I gave myself that. I gave myself 2 months, which was the longest period of time I had ever gone without like putting some sort of public piece of content out. And then when I felt like I was good again, I wrote the script for Back to the Mission, which for me was kind of it's time to get back on the horse, time to get back to work and kind of like fuck shit up again. And so that's where we're at. And so now like it feels good. It felt incredible to put that video out, and it's something that I felt was important and needed to be talked about, and it's something that a lot of people don't talk about, and so I did it, and now it gave me the permission to get back to doing the things I need to be doing.
Yeah. How different do you feel when you're approaching, say, a sponsored a video or a project on behalf of a client versus when it's just you, there's a white piece of paper in front of you, and you can go anywhere with it? Obviously, with the creative stuff for brands, you have creative freedom, but you still have to follow guidelines and get it approved or whatever that process might be. But how different is it when you're approaching it's totally a Babin project, no ifs, ands, or buts about it?
That's the thing that I think is tough, is that there shouldn't be a difference. I should push for there not to be a difference, because the reason brands want to work with me are oftentimes based off of those like individual Babin projects. So one of the questions I was sort of like left floating with at the beginning of this year, like early January, is why am I letting it change so much? Like whenever I'm making a video for myself, I'm like, all right, I'm just going to pour my heart and soul and like blood into this video. But then whenever it's sponsored or I have a brand tagging along, I'm like, oh shit, I got to play it all different. I got to like be a different character. And I think that was an issue, is I didn't like the videos that were coming out of that branded work. And so, yeah, there's rules and, guidelines and things that you have to stick to. But my biggest goal for this year is closing the gap there of like what a sponsored piece of content is versus what like my own personal stuff is, because it doesn't do anything good for either side of it. And becoming okay with saying no. I mean, like at the end of last year, like backed out of projects that were like deep into the process because I was like, this is too far gone, this is not me, and if I put this out, people are going to know that it's bullshit, because it has no contextual meaning to anything else I've done throughout my career. And so that's been really tough. But closing that gap is important, man. Like there's something about, I think about like musicians that make like crazy work and they get signed to a label and their whole sound changes because there's this new pressure of a label and stuff like that, whenever the work that got you there is what matters, and it's what's going to continue to push you forward.
Yeah, I love that aspect of trying to make it as one, that it should not change if it's a brand or if it's for you. And for some reason, the first thing that it just like popped in my mind would be like, I'd imagine when Kobe Bryant was practicing his free throws and taking those in a closed, quiet gym, he would try to replicate that same feeling when he's in the Staples Center sold out and there's people chanting his name, like trying to just stay in that same mental state. It's the same repetition. It's the same process. It's the same everything. And I love that. I've never thought of it in that aspect, but that's true. That's why people are coming to you.
Yeah, but it's like I really like the way you just framed that up, because if it's the reverse, if you're only doing it for when the fans are there and they're chanting your name, it's not going to be sustainable in the long term. Like if you have to, and I love that like process is a section of what we're going to talk about, because I think like it's sexy to talk about like, oh, I love the process, but like, do you really love the process? Do you really love whenever like nothing's clicking? So yeah, you have to make sure that if you're not having a good time when it's you by yourself making no money making something, then your life's not going to get substantially better whenever brands start paying you to do it.
That's why I'm still here, baby. Still going 5 years strong. Not stopping anytime soon. Enjoying every rep of the way, baby. Every rep of the way. Couple more things in creative, and then we'll kind of get into process. But I recently held my first Clubhouse, which was really unique and interesting, just kind of leaning into that whole platform. And I discussed with a group of creatives the importance of consistent creativity, which is obviously hard for a lot of people to kind of brew up sometimes. How do you hold yourself accountable to show up and do the work when you start? I know you just talked about having that 2 to 3 month kind of like hiatus. Now you're starting to get back into the rhythm. Is there any things that you do that help you stay accountable? For example, like me, my way of holding me disciplined is scheduling. I know that every Monday night I record my solo podcast. I know that during the week I need to record at least once with a guest. That's what holds me accountable. Is there anything specific that you do that helps you stay accountable?
Yeah. Well, not to, like, I definitely have an answer to that question, but there was one thing you said that I liked, and the like showing up consistently, making things creatively. I think that right now there's this idea that if you aren't pressing publish, that the work is not valuable. Like, yeah, I took a 2-month hiatus from posting publicly, but you better believe like I was still making something every day, like it's not like I just like shut down. And so like I wrote this caption at the beginning of the year where I said like I really want to romanticize practice, and like practice is hella valuable, man. And you don't have to like show everyone like every swing at the ball you take. Like you can only show them like the home runs if you want. Like I think there's value in showing the process, but don't think that because you're not showing every piece of work that you're not showing up consistently. That's my like preach for a second.
I love that.
So I think you're totally right. Scheduling is big. Like I journal a lot. Like I'm really big on like to-do lists and making sure that I have those. Kind of, I mean, I guess it would be scheduling, but I've gotten really particular about my actual digital calendar and like putting blocks of time for certain tasks. Cause like I have ADD. I also am like normal, and I think I can easily fall down a YouTube rabbit hole or whatever. And so it's really important for me to know what the task at hand is. So I do like every Sunday I do a weekly goals, but then every night I do a daily goals of like, or like a daily to do. So I have like my overarching week of like, this shit has to get done. No ands, ifs, or buffs. They're like not negotiable. And then I have my daily sort of checklist that I go through. And that's kind of my sort of routine, but it also, similar to the like morning routine and things like that, they change a lot. I get bored. And so I think that I'm constantly trying to like come up with new systems and refresh those systems and figure out different ways and things like that. Also, I think that I've tried to make my days as simple as possible. It's something I got from Matt Diavella, who is a good friend, and he's the man. But I used to do this thing where like my to-do list would have like 20 things on it that had to get done. And he was like, just make your to-do list like 3 things. Like, what are the 3 things you actually have to get done that day? And now I've shifted that, where it's like my to-do list usually has like 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 if it's a really crazy day. Never anything more than that. Just makes it a lot more manageable, and you actually move the needle forward versus trying to build Rome in a day, and then you end up not getting shit done.
Yeah. One of the guiding principles at Liquid IV is rocks versus sand. So it's imagining your to-do list. You have rocks, some of the bigger priorities, and the sand, some of the smaller ones. If you want to fill both the rocks and the sand in a cup, you need to put the rocks in first and then put the sand. If you do it vice versa, the rocks won't all fit with the sand. And so similarly, that's what I do, is I keep a running to-do list. And as things shifts and priorities become bigger, then I'll move those to the top. But I recognize this running to-do list is a running to-do list. It's never going to be completely cashed out. And it should never be. There should always be something else that needs to get worked on. But the difference is I don't feel so bad that at the end of the day that I have more to do. I know I got tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. And let's just take a second to appreciate the high quality podcast content that Matt Diavella brought to the Ground Up Show. One of the best in the game. I remember watching, I think it was either you when you were on his show, or it had to have been, because I know you were on the early aspect of that podcast. I don't remember who it was, but I said, whoever this man is, he is cooking up the best podcast visual content I have ever seen.
Dude, you know what's crazy? I feel like it's inappropriate to search this right now.
Please.
Fuck it. I'm going to do
ahead.
it.
Please, go ahead.
I have to know.
This is what I love. If I had to get...
If this is actually what I think it is, that's going to be really wild.
The year it came out?
Oh, no. No. So I was Ground Up Show episode 60 when I was on his, but for a second I thought it was 50. I know it was 50 the first time I was on yours, and I was like, that's going to be crazy. No, 60.
That would have been
gnarly. No, Matt's such an awesome guy. I think circling back to your question on like people who influence me, Matt is one of those. Less so because of his filmmaking style and things like that, but more because of the type of dude he is. And so I was on his show, episode 60. At the time, he had, I think, like 14,000 subscribers. And then I hung out with him a year later, and he had like 1.5 million. And then I hung out with him like 6 months after that, and he had like 2.4 million. But he was the same dude every time. Like, he's so down to earth. He's so charismatic. And I think... and it's still, I mean, like I've hit him up for random things, and we'll like chat and stuff, and he's just like the best dude. And so that's one of those things that I'm always thinking, like, no matter how busy I am or how, big my career gets or my channel gets or like whatever it is, like never losing touch with just who you are and like being a good dude is number one priority, because that's the shit that I think will take you the furthest.
Yeah, I agree. He's kind of similar to what you were talking about, how you want to make sure that you're approaching your brand work that's similar to you. He's approached his life the same way consistently, even as it's grown. I think what he does a really good job of that I see from afar is creating boundaries for his life and being very selective to what he says yes to, being selective to the people he lets into his life, selective with social media. I know that was a huge thing for him. I'm curious, outside looking in, what do you think it takes for a creator to do that, to go from 15,000 to the 1.5 to... Now he's probably over 2, closer to 3. How does it?
I think he broke 3.
He did break 3.
Crazy. Yeah, in a really wild short amount of time. I think there's a handful of things. I mean, like if I knew what the secret sauce was, like I'd be in a dramatically different place, you know.
You like taking your time, though. You're taking your time. You're gonna get there.
Yeah,
time isn't caught up yet.
I mean, dude, you want to talk about like some real? I got a comment today of someone commenting on a video, and they said it's so sad you make great content and it doesn't get enough views. And I was like, dude, we got years. You think I'm stressed now? Oh man, dude, let's like process, man. The faster it comes, the quicker it goes, man. Shit, I'm getting sidetracked.
The best part is about, hold on, before we go on, the best part is about being the slept on, the one that isn't in the millions, is this is just giving you more time to hone on the craft. You wouldn't have been ready for all the brand work if you popped off your first YouTube video. I wouldn't have been ready for A-list celebrities if my first episode of a podcast popped off. To me, I'm just like, this is just giving me more time to hone in on the craft, fine tune my tools, get better at interviewing or whatever it might be. And I feel like it's the same for you and for anybody else. The more time, it's really the only perspective you can look, because you can either go into the corner and complain and cry about it, or you can go, you know what, from a positive standpoint, this is just getting me more time to put in more reps and get better at it. So man, it's like, please.
And I don't know, like anytime someone's like, oh, like I hate, like I'm so underrated, like I'm an underdog. Would you rather be overrated? Yeah. Really? Like that's what you like, because there's only one way. Like you can be properly rated, which is tough to come by. You're either going to be underrated or overrated, and I would much rather be underrated because that gives me room to grow.
Totally.
But how does someone grow to these like massive milestones? I think that the idea of like luck and serendipity in a lot of these things can't be overlooked. Like I think those things are real, and you see these YouTube channels grow overnight. Sometimes the algorithm just works and it's great for you. The thing I think that makes Matt unique is that he didn't jump into YouTube and was like, all right, day one, I'm a filmmaker and now I'm going to be a full-time YouTuber and we're just going to go. Dude was making documentaries for 12 years before he made a YouTube video. That's like real. Like he had put in so many hours, so much work, and had never like put his face in front of it. And so I think like there's the quote of like luck is when, you know, preparation and timing like link up and things like that. And so I think if you're really, really prepared, you have your shit on lock, you know, like the world will take you as fast as it can whenever that time comes.
Yeah. That's a great thing of like, you don't know what we see people at where they are today, but we don't really understand the years of work that they put in to get them to where they are today. Which leads us right into process. We obviously we've talked about you doing some of the brand work where you worked with SoulGuard, is a backpack company, Bose headphones, Pilsner Urquell, I think is how you pronounce it, beer company.
Urquell, yeah.
Great, love beer. Squarespace, gotta love that. So in that process, when you're communicating with brands, how do you make sure that they are happy with their end product? Because I'm sure there's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes so that when this final product is delivered, they're like, this is exactly what we needed.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think pre-production is really important. There's like nothing worse than getting to that end goal, or like the video's done and you pass it off and the client's like, actually, this is not what we were looking for. And because you don't have a lot of options at that point, you know? So I always try and like, before I pick up a camera to start working on a piece of branded content, having as much understanding with that client as to what you're going to deliver. And that's the case with like Bose was a really big one. I also did a project with Grey Goose at the end of last year. Like those two were really important.
I think it was a Christmas time one, right? Was that the Christmas time one? I remember that.
A Christmas holiday show deal. Making sure that there's like really, really good communication and understanding on both ends. Sometimes it's not that way. Like anytime I work on a project with SoulGuard, which is like a backpack and travel brand, I know that they just have faith in me to like just push things as far as I can. And so like that project, which we shot in Joshua Tree, and all the extra footage is what I used to assemble the Back to the Mission video. But I literally went over budget on the video just trying to make the craziest content I could. I spent every dollar. It cost me money ultimately because I like flew a crew to Joshua Tree and I rented the craziest house I could. And like I just wanted, like, it was exciting for me. Like I just wanted to make that. And I know that on their end, they had no idea what I was going to do. They just knew I was delivering something in a few weeks. And so, it can go either way. You either have so much trust and faith, like in relationships with the brand, which like we've been working together for a long time, or you need to over communicate like crazy in the upfront and make sure that there are very little questions left to be answered between starting and finishing. Because like Bose was, I don't know, man. I think we exchanged 3 emails between like starting the video and like delivering.
Wow.
And so you got to make sure like a lot of work gets done in those 3 emails. Cause otherwise, like I said, I mean, you just, once like things have been cut and money's been spent, it's really, really hard to go backwards.
Yeah. The one word that's just so clear to me, and this is so true to not even just creators, people in your shoes, just in general, is communication. Make sure you communicate effectively, lay everything out, make sure everybody's on the same page. And at the end of the day, nobody's going to be disappointed because you've exactly told them what you're planning. They've approved it. They've checked it down. But so many times I think people are just afraid to communicate how they feel or whatever it might be. It's just like I've learned at the end of the day, communication, be on top of it. And it can never hurt to over communicate. I get it if you're like, sending a cold email and you keep following up, it's like, all right, let's pump the brakes a little bit, slow it down. But in most cases, it never hurts to over communicate and make sure that everyone's aligned versus not doing enough communication and just winging it and hoping that it works out for itself.
1,000%. I think 85% of the world's problems could be solved with just better communication.
Come on, ladies and gentlemen. Come on. A quote that I know that you love. The path you're on right now versus the path that you think you should be on are probably closer than you think. Chase Jarvis. What helps you stay present and focused on what's in front of you today instead of thinking about the future or where you want to be?
You can't control any of that shit at all. Like, it's insane how little control you have over the future and like how things are going to play out. None of us a year and a half ago thought we were going to be doing what we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. Like, we wouldn't be doing this podcast remotely. We wouldn't, like, the majority of the world wouldn't have spent the last year inside. Like, if you had plans on March 1st last year, like, that shit changed.
Yeah.
And so you can only focus on like the task at hand, the moment of the thing you're working on. And I genuinely believe that, like, if you keep your head down and you focus on those moments, everything else will figure itself out because of the natural way that, like, the universe works whenever you're putting in work. Like, money will figure itself out. Time will figure itself out. Like, all those things. If you're doing the thing you have to do and you're doing it to your best, you're doing it to the best of your ability, then the world will take care of itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think time, like, my weeks go by so fast, and I feel very fortunate because I wake up and I'm genuinely excited for the day ahead of me because I love the career that I'm in. I love the passion projects I'm focused on, my physical health, my passion, just every part of my day I genuinely love. But I think one important thing that would recommend is just, like you said, it's just focus on what's in front of you today. I literally look at every 24 hours when I roll out of my bed every morning. People would think I'm a psychopath if there was a webcam face down on me when I wake up. But I put my 2 feet on the floor, and I look at this mirror in front of me, and I literally say out loud, 24 hours, it's a war. Let's give it everything we've got. And I just try to treat like today at bat, I got a bunch of Q2 planning for Liquid IV. I got this podcast with Babin tonight. Other than that, I'm just going to go with the flow. I'm not going to stress about stretching myself too thin, of overworking myself. I know what the priorities are today. I'm going to crush it. I got a bunch of shit I need to do tomorrow and Saturday and Sunday, but I'm going to cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah. And I think like the mirror test is a big one. And it's something like my buddy Jeff Staple, like whenever I first started following his stuff, was like, sometimes you just look in the mirror and like check yourself. Like if you're listening to this podcast and it sounds weird, but like go to your bathroom and look in the mirror and just like have a real conversation with yourself for a second and determine your level of happiness, your level of ambition. What do you actually want to do? Like if you're feeling lost, like those are conversations you should have, because in the same way that you're waking up and having that, like if you wake up for too many days in a row and you're like, fuck, I'm not hyped, you got to start really, really like pulling some levers in your life to get that shit back on track.
Yeah, that stillness, which I hope is benefiting a lot of people during this quarantine time, and it impacted me the most within that first like month or two, and I really had some downtime. I was like, okay, I got too much free time. I bought an Xbox, got sick of that. Got some golf clips, played a little bit of golf, got sick of that. Started really just like, okay, let's slow down a little bit and like, what do I genuinely want to do with the rest of my life? Oh, I missed the podcasting. Let's get back into that. But it all came from that stillness, which I know you're a big Ryan Holiday fan, and I'm a big fan of him. And just like stillness really is the key. And sometimes it sounds weird to look at just yourself in the mirror or to grab a journal, write down your thoughts. It doesn't just happen in that moment, but by continuously doing that over a week, over a couple weeks, and like letting things marinate and letting them kind of go through their process of like thoughtfulness and like, do I really want to get back into the podcast game? Let me think about it for a couple more days. Actually, I do. It's still on my head for the last 5 days. Let's just do it. That stillness is so important, man. So important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's where you find things. Like I did the same shit, man. Like my buddies and I all went through a real intense Call of Duty phase in the beginning where like we just played all night long and we're like chilling and it wasn't, I was having those same conversations of like, what do I want to make? Do I even want to make YouTube videos? Like that was a conversation I was having in my head. And in that moment, like the day that it got the most intense where I was like, fuck, maybe I should just go a different route with everything is whenever I had ordered a pair of Nikes and decided I'm going to take some pictures of it. And that video like changed fundamentally everything,
All it takes is one. All it takes is one. What's one change you've recently made that has helped your process or flow? I know you talked about before you have like a like a whether it's a notepad or an app where you're kind of tracking the to-do list, or is there anything recent that has helped you with the process and flow of your creativity?
The biggest thing, I'll say it again, is having two phones, fully separating like social. Like I literally call it my social phone, and I've disconnected with it so much that I have been losing track of it. And I'll be like running around the house because I actually need to post something, and I'm like, "Where's my social phone? I can't find it." Like it's just I don't know where I'm setting it. That has been really, really big because I think that I'm sure there's a wide range of people who listen to this show, but coming from
millions,
I'm a photographer,
we got
millions. Coming from the perspective of a photographer and filmmaker, like Instagram's a pretty dangerous place for me. Like it's given a platform for me to share work, but it's also if I'm consuming so much, my stuff is naturally going to start looking like everything that I'm consuming and looking at. And so for me, like my process has been trying to disconnect and get to a blank slate in my mind and just start kind of like, I don't know if I'm painting on the canvas of it, like I don't want half of someone else's painting and then I'm going to finish it. Like I want it to be all me. So that's kind of been the biggest thing. And also, I don't know, I think like my office that I'm sitting in right now, when I moved into this apartment, like a big thing I was excited about was having like a designated workspace, which is something I had never had before. And I've been like spending so much time like finessing and trying to get like the perfect layout. But I've come to find like actually I literally change how this office works almost every day. Like literally everything's on wheels, like my desk and all my cabinets, they're all on wheels so that I can like rearrange stuff. Because I think that constant like change and like not letting too much pattern develop in your mind is really valuable.
It's like hitting a refresh button. Every time you walk in there, when you're walking through that door, as simple as walking through a doorway might be, it can feel like it's time to turn on. It's time to get into the work mode. But then also adjusting where maybe there's some days you want to look out the window. Maybe some days you just want to look at a blank wall in front of you so that you're not getting distracted by the beautiful view that you have up there. Like, I get it. It makes sense to constantly hit that refresh button, move things around. It probably hasn't been impacting you because you're off the social, but I want you to kind of think back to before you kind of took this hiatus break. What helps you not fall for the comparison trap or imposter syndrome? And I love that piece that you did on imposter syndrome, but kind of both of those, it's so easy to fall for it, even for, the comparison trap of just, you can literally fall for that at any moment in time, whether you're just getting started or you're 10 years in the game. And then obviously imposter syndrome where you've built yourself a career, you've done incredible things, you still have a shit ton of fuel in the tank, but then you're like looking at yourself in the mirror going like, I'm full of shit, like who am I to be making these videos? So How do you ignore those inner conversations within your head?
Yeah, I think I guess I'll tackle comparison trap first, which I remember the last podcast we did, the group episode with, it was myself and Zach and Mitchell.
A lot of heat on that podcast.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. And it's also just been so, I don't know, there's something about like those moments, and then you watch like just how incredible both of their careers are going. It's just too dope. But
totally,
that was something we talked about a lot, was the comparison trap. And it's something that I think about on like a really regular basis, was that conversation. Becoming a fan of like yourself and your own work is probably one of the hardest things to do. I'm not a good fan of my work. It's something I'm getting better at it, but I've historically not been good at it. Like I just haven't really loved my work. I always am like striving for like, it needs to be better in some way. The more you can stop looking at things as I can't do what they're doing, and more so like, but nobody can do what I'm doing, is where the comparison trap starts to unlock. At least for me. You know, I will watch so many people's work and I'm like, man, like it's so sharp, it's so crispy, like that's amazing work. I can't make pictures or videos that look like that. But also then I'm like, but I have a really cool storytelling style. And I think like I can make really like relatable, honest content. So like, boom, that's good. You know, like there's value in the things I'm creating. And also just like recognize that it's a long process, you know, like it's okay to, like, life comes in waves. And so there are moments where I think like my shit's the hottest thing ever. And I'm like, great, we're killing it, you know, and then there's days where I think it's not. And so like becoming okay with those waves and recognizing like the value in your work. And then imposter syndrome. Yeah. Like I've made a lot of videos. It's probably, I would say, one of the I don't know, maybe just because I talk about it regularly, but it's one of those things that I get asked about a lot. I get DM'd a lot, lots of emails. It's really, really hard to deal with. So just know that, like, for a starter, if you're dealing with imposter syndrome, or you don't think that that you're deserving of the place you've achieved, lots of people feel the same way, whether they're admitting it or not. Like, but behind like the highlight reel of everyone's Instagram, like everyone's dealing with insecurities about their work. But I like to make like highlight reels for myself, like in my mind. So at this point, like just where my career has landed, there's like no way this was all by accident. Like there's no way I tricked the system at this level. Like the jobs and opportunities I've been able to have, there's no way like I really, really pulled the wool over everyone's eyes for this long. At least I hope not. So that's my own imposter syndrome, like popping its head back out, you know? And so like I can recognize like, all right, I've had a good amount of success and not the longest amount of time. Like I've only really been working. It was just in February, it would have been 5 years since I moved from Florida to New York, and like
Crazy.
My whole sort of career started. And so, you know, like recognize the work you've done and be okay to be a fan of yourself. And, you know, just even if you're only becoming more of a fan of yourself, like 1% every day, that's putting in work, and that's growing. And,
see what that is?
Oh my God. I love that.
Got it tatted on my hand, baby, as a daily reminder.
Well, I don't know if you remember, I have the process tattooed on this arm back here.
I do remember that.
Yeah, man, that's everything, yeah. You know? But yeah, that's kind of like my thoughts on both of those. Is just, man, like, fuck, dude, we live in this world where it's like, we're made to believe, because everyone's trying so hard to make it look like they have their shit together online, that you're like, oh, maybe I don't have my shit together. None of those people have it together either. Yeah. They're just putting on a show. Yeah. Like we're all like, it's all a process. We're all figuring it out every single day. I wish it's like one of those things that we were all more honest about it. It's one of the reasons, like it's one of the consistent things I've always tried to do in all the videos I make, is like talk about where I'm at in an exact moment, whether that is good or bad. Yeah. Because I think we need more of it. Yeah.
Well, I just want to echo what you said is you have to become your biggest hype man or hype woman. And I think that is so important when you're early on, or even in the like even where I am today in my life, I am my biggest hype man. When there's no crowd there rooting me on, nobody's there to cheer me every step of the way, I literally will look at myself in the mirror and be like, you fucking got this, Bob. You can become anything you want to become. You can do any dream. It sounds cliche. It might sound woo, but it's like you have to literally mentally prime yourself to become your biggest fan, because if you're not doing it, who else is gonna? Especially when you're just starting in anything in your life. It doesn't even have to be creator based. It's like, if you're not hyping yourself up, you cannot rely on other people, because guess what? All those other people are going through the same shit and they need to hype themselves up. So,
like everyone's focused on their thing. Dude, right before we got on this, like, I don't know, I listened to Gotta Have It from Watch the Throne, which I think is like the best hype yourself up song possible.
I listened to Drake.
I like danced around like by myself in this room before we got on the call. You know what I mean? Like you got to do those things.
Yes. I'm a big believer of that. I don't post them as much, but I still go through the process of 10 minutes leading to a podcast. Usually 9 out of 10 times it's Drake. I turn it on. I will literally dance once again in this infamous mirror that I have, and I'll literally just be like breaking it down, just like getting the blood flowing, just getting dialed in. So then when I get in these podcasts, I'm fucking ready to go. So big fan of that. Couple quick questions and then we'll kind of wrap up. Best lesson you learned from Gary that you still remind yourself of today?
Oh man. So I'm selfishly not going to give you a real answer because I may or may not have a video coming out in the future that's called The Number One Lesson I Learned from Gary.
Oh, no way. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm not going to give you the real answer. I'll give you the second one. I mean, I
love that.
That's so good. Amazing timing.
So when your video drops now, what I'll do is I'll cut this clip and be like, the best lesson ever, and I'll be like, tuned to Babin's YouTube video. Don't say the lesson that you learned for that video, but give me something else.
Yeah. Something that always is. Sorry if you can hear my dog in the background.
No, I love it.
It's around that time.
I like to call rawness of the audio space. I love it.
Love it. I think it kind of connects always back to not putting on a show or like adding some sort of highlight reel. Oh man, he's getting after it.
Don't worry, I love it. It's totally great. We got like, it'll be like 4 or 5 more minutes, and you'll be able to take him around for a walk.
As long as the audio is not.
Oh, I love it.
I think that the whole the whole like highlight reel thing I'm talking about. Being okay with like being authentic and being yourself, like making sure that being yourself is cool and like the number one thing is probably the biggest thing I learned from Gary. And just like not feeling like you have anything to prove to anyone. Like, I don't care what anyone else is doing. I'm going to do what I want to do and just be myself. And if that's good for you, cool. If it's not good for you, that's fine. I'm going to keep doing my own shit.
Yeah.
Like I remember there was this one time where someone had asked Gary a question. It was like a guy, and he's like talking about like dating or something like that, and he's like, I'm never going to change who I am for like a partner or a person or anything. I know what I have to offer. I know what my value is. If you're not down with that, that's cool. I'm sure you can go find something great that'll work for you, but I'm just going to stay on my own wave.
I love that. Authenticity component, to make a long story short, is what got me the job with Liquid IV, because I posted, I just told this story. I jumped in a clubhouse the other day with D-Rock in there, and I told him this story because I was like, I've never had a chance to talk to him. Yeah. I said, D-Rock, I got to tell you this fucking story because I learned it from all the content you had done and he had done with documenting Gary's life. But I had posted an Instagram story in October of 2019 saying, I had always posted like the Uber days of me slaying the streets, and I posted one night just saying like, I'm done. I don't want to drive Uber no more. I'm ready to change that chapter. And that's when Brandon Cohen of Liquid IV saw it, DM'd me, hopped on a call, was hired by them within 2 weeks. So I think the authenticity and just telling your whole truth and nothing but the truth, not just showing a highlight reel, the highs, the lows, and everything between. You never know who's watching you. And that little moment completely like tweaked to my whole like, I just got to show it all. The highs, the lows, and everything between. And it's... Big takeaway right there. Big takeaway. One mistake you've made in your life that you're grateful for?
All of them. I mean, mistakes are everything. No, I mean, I guess like we can stay on the Gary train. I was like super disorganized, and
when working with him or what?
In all aspects of my life, but in this instance, like the way I was managing content was really disorganized. Just like didn't have like systems and workflows for like creating stuff put together. That led to like hard drives failing and losing content. There's like in the archives, there's like 45 episodes of Daily V raw footage that has been lost because of me like not doing a good backup workflow. And that lesson in turn like fundamentally changed everything. So not only is like my laptop is so fucking organized, it like freaks people out whenever they see like how my hard drives are laid out. Like it's weird. But it's not only that, but it's like it's how my to-do lists are organized. It's how like all the structure and systems that are in my life are hyper organized because I made enough mistakes not having shit organized in the past and losing out on like what I'm sure is. There was this constant joke that Gary and I, and like he would constantly razz me for it. I lost a memory card in Australia that we say probably was like the most important piece of content he had ever made, and I just lost the hard drive. Like I lost the card, and so whenever you like have enough of those happen, it's a good reminder to get your shit together.
Oh boy, I respect.
But I wouldn't trade it. Yeah. Also, like
you
know, like those are important things, man. Like if you not only does it make a good story because now I can tell the story here and be like, I fucked up and like this is how I learned from it, but like what if Jay-Z like everything just went perfect? You ever think about how boring of a story that would be?
I agree.
Like, it would be terrible, you know? Like, all these iconic people are, like, their stories and everything are made off of mistakes and when things went wrong. So don't, like, whenever shit happens and you make a mistake or something goes wrong, just embrace it and move forward. Because at the end of the day, it's just, like, there's very few things that are unfixable or, like, that you can't grow from or change from. And so, like, once you become okay with that, you know, those mistakes just fundamentally push you forward.
Yeah, that's a great perspective to have. To quote a fellow Uber passenger I had one time, bad decisions make for great stories. And that right there, losing the hard drive in Australia for sure is a great story.
1,000%.
Last question for you. What's an area of your life you need to put more effort into?
Relationships, I think. Just like how I'm interacting with people. I have this new thing where I have a calendar reminder every day at 10 a.m. to text someone random in my phone to have a good day. Just like I would scroll through my contacts, I'll see someone who I haven't talked to in a while, and I'll just send them a quick note, and I'm like, hey, I hope you're doing well. You're on my mind. Like, let me know if there's anything else I can do to help, because there are certain relationships and certain opportunities I didn't take advantage of whenever I should have, and I think in the long run they've cost me. Like I've lost relationships that I might not be able to get back, and so that's something that's always a priority, is making sure that both like business relationships, friendships, like romantic relationships, like all of those things, like they need to be really dialed, because it's difficult to do a lot of things on your own. Like you need people and you need relationships, and so that's one area of my life that I'm constantly auditing and trying to do my best to make better.
Yeah, I respect that. I think just a simple text like that, "Have a nice day," goes a long way. But any times that I do need to put more effort into that myself. But any times that I beat myself up, I also remind myself the phone works both ways, so don't beat yourself down and feel so bad about yourself. But I think one small step of just one simple text every day at the same time every day becomes a habit, becomes routine, and at some point within a year, 2 years, you've probably caught up with everyone you need to, or even within like 6 months, you have said hello to the people that really matter the most. And I feel like that too then becomes a game of you're evaluating not what can I get from these people or what relationship should I maintain, but what people do I genuinely need to put more effort into? And you're probably realizing that within the first 60 or 90 days of even within 30, within the first 15 texts, it's like, 15 different people that you haven't spoken to in a while. Who, how much do these people mean to me? But I think that simple step, that's a good one.
And also like the new relationships you want, like the idea, like, we've never been as connected as we are now.
Crazy.
And we'll only get more connected. But the ability that you can name an A-list celebrity that you can DM on Instagram,
Unreal.
and they might actually respond to you. If you're not taking advantage of that and just like shipping messages all the time, you're just leaving opportunity on the table.
I'm the king of the Hail Mary, baby. I just be shooting shots. If it gets left on scene, great. If there's no respond back,
Great.
I'll keep following up. But yeah, it's
a numbers game. There's this quote that I leave on my desktop right now.
So you're,
It's Picasso created more than 50,000 works of art. How many of those are considered masterpieces that we still admire today? Only about 100. That's less than 1% of his creations are still relevant. Stop trying to be perfect. It's a numbers game.
Wow.
Start creating.
Wow.
Like if you message 1,000 people and only 5 of those respond, it's cool because like the other ones might come at a different point in your life. Maybe the universe wasn't ready for that relationship yet. And if not, it's cool. At least you tried.
Yeah.
But like it, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter. Like everything's a numbers game.
yeah, put in the numbers, put in the reps. To end the podcast, I always allow the guests to put a challenge out there to the listeners. If they made it this far on the podcast, what's one challenge you have to any listener that listened to the podcast today?
Make something tomorrow for yourself and don't share it with the internet. Just keep it to yourself.
Don't share it anywhere. Just keep it.
Yeah. Just make it yours.
Make
it your iPhone wallpaper if you want. I don't know. Just like
wrap it up, put it in a bow, send it through to yourself for 2021 holidays.
100%.
Babin, it's like I said, would have much rather have done this podcast in person, but also really appreciative of how the pandemic has led me to start doing more of these remote podcasts, which has allowed me to reconnect with people like you. So I really appreciated how this has forced me to kind of be nimble and adjust to the real time of everything that's happening. The last thing I want to say is, obviously, first off, you know that big fan of you, respect you, always here for you if you ever need me. But you will never know how much that moment in August coming up VaynerMedia to do that podcast with you, how much momentum that carried for me in my career, because that was right coming up on 1 year of doing my first year of podcasting, and I was with Dylan. Dylan was cracking up. He's like seeing me fucking nervous as hell outside before we go up for the podcast. He's like, you're just out of control right now. And that was a very iconic moment in my podcast career where I was like, I just saw myself go from watching these videos and somebody like you who had created them to now I'm podcasting with them, and then 4 or 5 years later still holding relationships. So that little moment meant a lot to me, and any other moment that you've been some part of my content has been really appreciative. But greatly respect you, always here to support you, and I just can't wait to see you keep pushing that content. And my favorite part of a Babin artwork or Babin work is at the end, Babin 2019, Babin 2020, Babin 2021.
Yeah, man. I don't know. It's something I got that from Casey Neistat, because he would always put like New York City and then the year. And there's something I like that. I mean, it'll be a cool like archive, regardless of where my career goes. Like the thought that my great grandkids at some point will be able to go on the internet and like see what I was making in the year I was making it, and like where my head was at. That's just really fucking dope to me. And it's a nice, like, now it's kind of become like a thing that people just like you're saying right now, people just kind of like know that it's the way I end my videos. But yeah, I mean, look, thank you for all the kind words. This was an awesome conversation, and to give you the props too, like I get hit up for lots of podcasts and conversations, and you've consistently been one of the most unique conversations. Like you very rarely are touching on the highlight reel or like the low hanging fruit. You've always like really come prepared with great topics and conversations, and it's also been really sick to watch you grow and the way your career is sort of developed and unfolded. And same to you, man. I wish you nothing but health and happiness and success and all the above, which I'm sure you will accomplish.
I appreciate that, man. We're gonna be sipping some champagne in the Hollywood Hills as soon as this pandemic ends, so don't you worry, Babin.
I can't wait, man.
Thanks for taking the time. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy this podcast, make sure you screenshot this episode, post it to your IG story, tag Babin. Even though he won't see it on social media, he'll see a bunch of DMs come inbound with mentions, and it'll be a couple weeks too late, but tag him at Babin, Babin, and tag me at Bob, BO, 3 B's, 4 A's, and a Y. Share it out on your IG story. Let us know what you thought of the podcast, and make sure you go check out his YouTube page at Tyler Babin. Any last plugs or anything else you have to say before we wrap up?
You did it better than I could.
Let's get it, baby. Thanks for tuning in. It's the Bearded Man Podcast. See ya.